Hello, welcome to my video talking about the journey behind building my passion project. So this passion project that I built going into my senior year of high school secured me over $500,000 of merit scholarships, along with an admission to Harvard and other top schools. Now, when I created it, the purpose of it was not to get these rewards, but that being said, I think that it can help you a ton in the college application process because it shows some sort of initiative. But then, even more than that, it can show you a lot about what you might want to do in the future, because I would have never considered entrepreneurship as a path if I hadn't built something of my own and seen how fulfilling it is to create something with your name behind it. And I learned so much in the process. So, for starters, I'm going to quickly introduce what Smarts for Heart, my passion project, is. So I'm just going to take you to the website here. So Smarts for Heart is my student-led babysitting and tutoring service in New York City. It connects high school and college students with families across all 5 boroughs. And I think a lot of the rhetoric online around what passion projects look like is, solving a huge world issue, something that has national or international acclaims and awards, etc. But I think, and I've also met a lot of other Harvard students who built things that had a more direct impact on their community. And I think when you approach it from a place of not putting these high stakes on yourself, it makes it less intimidating. Now, if you want to build it to become something that spans across the globe, good for you. But that doesn't mean that if you want to start a passion project that's smaller, that it's not a worthwhile pursuit. So this is what my website currently looks like now. Definitely more professional than what it looked like when I started this about 2.5 years ago now. And I want to take you through the path that I took to get here. Yeah, because I feel like online people say, oh, create a passion project, but or they show the end result, but they don't really show what the starting steps look like. So this is the video for you, and this is just one example of what a passion project could look like. Take what you will from it. As I go through my journey, I'm going to reflect on the things that I did that I'm, happy that I did, but then things maybe that I would approach a little bit differently now, 2.5 years into running this type of business that I actually originally started as a fundraising nonprofit service. And then I moved it into a business going into college as I continued to run it past my senior year of high school. So, for context, in high school, I was an instructor let me actually zoom up on the screen here. So I was an instructor at my local Kumon Center. I started this towards the end of my sophomore year, and then I did this until halfway through my senior year of high school. So it was definitely one of my longest commitments. And then at the same time, I was a member of the Youth Advisory Council. So I started this a few months after being a Kumon instructor, and I was participating at the Ronald McDonald's House, New York, which is a local charity in New York City that provides free housing and care for families who have children undergoing pediatric cancer treatment. And it has a physical location that I would pass by every day on my way to school, so it was very immediate in my community. And I remember when I saw an email about supporting them, of course I wanted to help out. And then I also became the president of Art for Heart. It was a club at my school that would donate cards to the Ronald McDonald's House, New York. And then I was also a volunteer tutor at nonprofit organizations like Learn to Be and Schoolhouse World. If you've never heard of Schoolhouse World, it's actually a sister platform of Khan Academy. And I would basically run SAT boot camps helping high school students study for the math portion of the SAT. And then on top of that, I was also a private tutor and babysitter for 2 different families. Now, what I want to point out about all of these positions and jobs is that they were very entry level. So they were pretty easy to secure. It really was just me showing interest in doing them. That's how I got these positions. And it didn't require any technical skills. Yeah, so you may look at this and be like, okay, that seems not that crazy for someone to get into Harvard with these activities. And that would be correct. These were not tough to get. Now, the summer before my senior year of high school, so this was pretty late to start thinking about a passion project, but that being said, it's never too late if I literally started thinking about this summer going into my senior year. I I was happy running Art for Heart, but I wanted to create a more tangible impact on the Ronald McDonald's House in New York by raising money. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something with a bigger impact. And so I remember asking my older sister for ideas, and she was like, well, you do a ton of babysitting and tutoring. Why don't you do something related to that? But I didn't want to work around the clock to fundraise money that was coming out of my pocket. So I didn't want to take on so many jobs and every week just like donate my own money. I wanted to instead, I realized, create a student-led babysitting and tutoring service. So I would gather a team of high school students and I would connect them with families who needed babysitting and tutoring support. Now the fundraising framework of all of this is that half of the payments would go to the sitters and tutors and the other half would be directly donated to charity. So I wasn't taking a cut of any of the money at this time. I just purely wanted to see how much money we could raise while also employing high school and college students for these types of jobs. Now, my note about this is that, yeah, it's tough to create a project around something that you've never done yourself. So I had, honestly, years at this point of babysitting and tutoring experience. And so yeah, doing one-on-one tutoring isn't a scalable idea. As I mentioned, I didn't want to be the one doing all of this, but I needed that experience and build a credibility from my background of doing it in order to create a tutoring service. So this could be applied, like if you wanted to start an arts organization, you would probably need some personal experience doing art to really understand what people would want from it. So that being said, make sure you've done the dirty work yourself or kind of like the one-on-one service type of work before, creating a team or creating a service around it. And yeah, you learn better by exposing yourself to the pain points of the target audience. So by working with families at the Kumon Center, by doing one-on-one babysitting and tutoring, I was kind of picking up information based on what families would tell me about, like, oh, it's so hard to connect with other high school students who who have affordable rates but can also work around my schedule. And yeah, that's why I think my experiences at these places were very worthwhile, even though they weren't, say, like super impressive or fancy, just because they were like the seeds of creating a bigger service around these pain points. Something I would do is, instead of just thinking of an idea in my head and just going for it, is also just doing some more research on other services or organizations in the same area. So I'd probably look up New York City tutoring services led by students. And just because something similar exists doesn't mean that you also, you can also do it. So kind of similar to the college resources that I'm currently building out, there are tons of college resources online. And people have joined my school community, Ivy Off Script, even though there are so many other places they can go. Just because naturally, when you build something, it's going to be different based on your background, your story, your ideas. And I think if someone else is doing something and it's working for them, that's a good sign that you should, take their share of the market. If it's successful, that's a sign that there is a need for it. And as I said once before, like, naturally your service or product or whatever you're building is going to be different based on your lived experiences and your vision for it. Yeah, so I didn't really do any research in this area. I was just like, oh, I don't know anyone else doing it. There's a need for this in my community. I'm just going to build it, which is a little bit naive, but yeah, that's what I did at the time. So I think every good project is addressing a problem and creating a solution for it. So the problems that I was seeing in my community were, it was difficult for students to connect with part-time jobs that fit their schedules and interests. I personally had this issue where it was hard for me to find families who I could work for when I was, around the clock I was on the cross-country team, I was running a club, I was studying at school, etc. And then it's also difficult for families to find that reliable, affordable support. And the solutions were, that I solved, the solutions I made by creating Smarts for Heart was creating a job network for students. So the way I framed it is that by joining the team of Smarts for Heart, they would secure a part-time job and they would get money and experience. And then they would also fundraise money, which could be a resume patter. As I expressed it to them, if you join, you can write in your resume, raise X amount of money for a charitable cause, and then also handled the matchmaking process for students and families, so family and students could be relieved of that burden of trying to find people to work with. And then I also hand-selected and interviewed the sitters and tutors for families. So families, sometimes who found me, they would go on care.com and it would take them weeks to connect with someone because they would have to do the interviews themselves. Whereas if they came through me, they could rely on the fact that our team was already hand selected. Yeah, so going along these lines, make sure that your service, product, or project just solves a problem, no matter how big or small. See, like, my problem wasn't solving world's hunger, it was solving a job network issue in my neighborhood. And if I were to go back, I would take more steps to kind of validate the idea. So I would actually discuss these issues with friends and be like, hey, like, has it ever been hard for you to find a job? What would you want from, like, an agency who could do this for you? And then I would also ask families that I worked for, so like those 2 families I babysat and tutored for, how would you assess the credibility of a childcare provider, someone who offered a tutor for you? Just because, especially in the industry that I chose of, like, childcare and education, a lot of it is based on trust, right? Who is the person who's entering your home once a week to work one-on-one with your child or pick them up from school and hang out with them when no one is around? There's a high level of trust that is required. And I think I wish I got more insight from families by just upfront, like, asking them, like, how could I prove that credibility to you if I'm not the one working with you, but I'm referring someone to your family? Now, in July of 2023, so this is the second month of when I started thinking, okay, I could make this happen. So I realized I can't have a babysitting and tutoring service if I don't have any families who actually wanted to pay for it. So I started pitching my ideas to families. And the way I first did this is that I created a random flyer on Canva. I'll actually pull it up here because it was pretty bad, or just not well made at all. Let me see if I can find this here. Yeah, so this is what it looked like. There was just a lot going on here. And the way I pitched to families is that they could access affordable support for their children, a 2-in-1 combo. Your payment is not only helping support a high school student trying to make money, but also families undergoing really tough times. And then then we would also find a tutor or sitter who fits their schedule. And you can see that I linked our website, which had the Wix.com name in it because I was on the free version of it. So it wasn't professionally set up at all. If I was a parent seeing this, I'd be a little confused as well. A lot's going on here. So I remember I posted this on my Instagram. So I created an Instagram for Smarts for Heart, and I asked my sister and her friends to post it on their social media stories, on Instagram specifically, and we got no traction from that. And that makes sense because my sister's friends who were in college at the time, all of their followers are mostly college students, like, who are their friends, not necessarily parents. But then instead of, just sticking with that, I also asked the family I babysat for to promote my service on their social media, because the mom that I worked for, she was very active on social media, and obviously all of her followers were her daughter's friends' parents, and these were the people I was trying to target. So I would say instead of spending months creating a team, creating a logo, creating an operations and all of this stuff, and creating content, the first thing I did was literally just try to find the families who would need this service. And going back, I would do the same exact thing. You want to just validate that people need the service before building it out. Otherwise, you might waste your time and become very demotivated by that process. And then you also want to identify your target audience and plan marketing that will find them. So once I realize my target audience, aren't the college students that my sister's friends' followers are, it's going to be the parents that follow the family I work for. I'm going to ask them, can you repost this flyer? And, you want to start thinking, what platforms are they on? So parents typically are on Facebook mom groups. They have WhatsApp group chats. And you also want to think about the type of messaging that will appeal to them and that will help them see the benefits that you're trying to offer them. And then I remember at the same time, I received pretty discouraging advice from a lawyer. So the dad that I worked for, he was the dad of the girl I babysat. He asked his lawyer to give some feedback on this idea that I, kind of pitched to these girls' parents. And his lawyer friend sent us this email. He literally said, like, oh, this is not an original idea. You need to be very careful with babysitting especially. And I agree with that. I think babysitting is a very vulnerable job, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong in babysitting. And yeah, he was being very blunt. Like, you just can't start this business without opening an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, I believe. And that basically just separates me from the business as like legal entities. So if something goes wrong in the business, I'm not held liable for it, which is very important looking back at that. But I literally had no idea what that meant at the time. Yeah, so he was pretty discouraging. And I remember when I saw this email, it felt like there was a pit in my stomach, because when you're trying to build something and there's no traction yet and you've been spending weeks on it, it really hurts. But that being said, now looking back at that comment, people will not understand your vision at first. I think, I think about maybe the people who created Tinder, right? The swiping app. When they created it, they probably had friends who were like, what do you mean you're going to create this like swiping dating app? But now it's like a global phenomenon, you know? And so if people don't understand your vision at first, that's okay. But it does not mean that you're on the wrong track or you're trying to do the wrong thing or your vision doesn't make sense. Because eventually when you do build it and you find your first clients and you get traction, it's going to start validating itself eventually. Okay, so now moving into August. Yeah, so the family I babysat for, they finally agreed to post about my service on their Instagram story, and I kind of told them what to write. So if you're asking people to promote your services, I recommend making it as easy as possible for them to do so. They're taking time out of their busy days to help you out, so you want to make it as easy and stress-free as possible. And during this time, I realized, okay, if they're going to post about on their Instagram stories, I would hope that parents would get interested in what we have to offer. And I would need to create like a website so they actually knew what we were offering beyond just like a random flyer. So right before they posted this on their stories, I created a name for the service using ChatGPT. It literally took like 5 minutes. And then I created a website using the free version of Wix. It was a drag and drop, which is the drag and drop website builder. So this is what one of the first versions of the Smarts for Heart website looked like. I think this is actually probably like the 5th iteration of it. This is, as you can see, it was back in October. This is when I downloaded it, but this is what it looked like towards the beginning. I don't have the full PDF of this, unfortunately, but like, as you can see, it looks very different from what it looks like now. So hopefully that provides some sort of reference of like, what it looked like when I first started. And what I did during this time to create the website, I literally looked up other tutoring services that I aspired to be like, and I just I copied the format of their website, and that ended up working out pretty well. So yeah, I think I'm really happy that I took this approach where I didn't waste time and energy debating what are the perfect names, what is the perfect brand color, or what the logo should be. Just start providing the service product or support that your project intends to offer. Do not worry about the technical like little things. And I think something I would do differently is that I had this random logo that I used before I created a new one like later on, but instead I would actually put my face at the front of the marketing. So for example, I would say for my business's Instagram profile, instead of putting the heart logo that I had, it should be like a photo of you, or on your landing page there should be an About Us page or an About Us section, because I think you're at the beginning when you're building something, you're kind of like selling yourself and you're selling your vision, and I think it's easier for people to connect with a product or a service when they actually know the person behind it, and they can kind of sort of visualize who they're speaking to by engaging in the service you're offering. Yeah, so once the family actually posted on their social media, I believe it was about like 3 to 5 families submitted an interest form. And that was so exciting. I remember being in my kitchen like one night when I saw the submissions come through, and I was like, oh my God, like I made it. What the heck? That was exciting because it just proved the concept. It proved that families were willing to go out of their ways to actually inquire about getting connected with a sitter or tutor from my team. There was no one on my team at this point, by the way. Anyways, I was going back and forth with these families, and eventually they stopped replying to my emails because it was just too much. Like, they would wait a day to respond. I would respond right away, and wait another 2 days for them to respond. Eventually, I realized that I had their phone number saved from the interest form, so I just had to cold call them. And that might not seem scary, but at the time this was my first time ever building something on my own, they like this was really scary. So I literally had to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown and just like dial them and be like, hey, this is Amelia from Smarts for Heart. Can I get you started? So the school year starts in September where I'm from. So I wanted to secure them for the start of the school year. Yeah. So my takeaways from this process is that you have to work to retain the interest of your clients. That means putting yourself out there and also responding to their messages as soon as possible. So when I saw an email come through, I would drop everything and respond to them. When they wanted to call me, I would drop everything and respond to them. You have to kind of be their guinea pig, or like you have to put in that grunt work at first, because you are working to get them involved, not the other way around, right? They should not be chasing you to get your support at the very beginning. Eventually, when you get enough demand, hopefully that is the case, but at the beginning, that's not how it works. Also, don't be scared to hear no's. I think what I've learned from this process is that every no is closer to the first yes. And just because one person doesn't want it doesn't mean, in this world of like 8 billion people, there's going to be someone who wants your support and wants what you have to offer. So let's say, okay, I'm going to take you through the process of what it looked like when a family said like, yes, we want to connect with the sitter or tutor. So essentially, one family was like, okay, we want a babysitter to help us out on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. I was like, okay, great. Let me schedule a parent orientation with you where I will introduce the sitter who will get started with you in September, and I'll review the operations and the logistical things like payments with you guys. So I remember I had this internship during the time, and I remember during my lunch break, I would sit in a back room that had a bunch of like construction boxes, and I would like prop up my laptop on one of the construction boxes, and I would start the meetings that way. So this is what the orientation looked like at first. This is like one of the first iterations. Thankfully, I've kind of like upgraded from this, but yeah, the goals of it were to provide further insight in the background of Smarts for Heart. So I was always pitching the story behind it along with the services we offered. And yeah, I'm just going to scroll through here. As you can see, this looks kind of rough. Yeah, this is the first tutor who was actually my best friend in high school. So yeah, and this was another babysitter I think I referred. These were the payment options. As you can see, we accepted payments through PayPal. Wow, I forgot that we used to do that, because now it does not work like that anymore. So I'll just scroll through here. As you can see, it was pretty informal, but I think families were impressed that I was organized enough to like put something together and like visually represent the entire process. And then, yeah, so once I got families who were interested in connecting with students, that's when I started to share the job opportunities with my friends at school. So my first tutors were my best friends, and I framed it as a good like side gig for them, not like they were working under me, because I think a lot of the time there can be that like peer competition where they don't want to like work for you. So I was just saying, hey, this is an opportunity I have. Would you be interested in taking it? Generally, I do not recommend hiring friends or family for business projects or anything that has money involved. But to get your first, your project started, you have to be scrappy. So you need to think, who is in your immediate network? And you might think, I don't really have a big network. So, you might think, but let's say you go to church, your friends at church or people at church might be your first clients or might be your first ambassadors. I don't even know. Your friends at school might be, like, for me, it was my friends at school who were my network, and that doesn't mean that they had their own businesses in that way where they're like mentors, but they were the ones who allowed me to get started because they were willing to take on these jobs. Okay, now we enter September, so this is when the school year started, and I had 3 families who connected with my team, as in my friends of sitters and tutors. And so we would, after the orientation call, they would directly connect with the sitter or tutor, so I would pass over the sitter and tutor's contact information to the family, and then the sitter and tutor would record their session after it was completed on a spreadsheet I created on Notion. So Notion is, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you can create spreadsheets from it. That's my best way of like describing it. I think it's also helpful for managing projects. But that being said, it was completely free to set up, and it was a pretty informal way of keeping track of everything. I didn't have to pay every month to do that, unlike, if you tried to pay for other software. It does add up over time. And then when the families paid, I would just request every 2 weeks for, them to pay me. I would show them what the sitter and tutor had recorded, and then the families would pay me through typically Venmo or Zelle. Now, this is an informal way of managing money and honestly kind of borderline irresponsible because when you're accepting payments as a business, you should not be taking them from cash apps. You should have like a business checking account set up, which I'm not sure if you might understand what I'm saying now, but then again, you have to be scrappy to get started. So you won't know what the right way is if you don't try the improper way of doing it first. And looking back, I would say to any people who are trying to create a project, try to challenge yourself to think, how many mistakes can I make? Instead of thinking, how many things can I avoid doing wrong? Because you're inevitably going to run into issues and make mistakes and things, but those are all things that you're going to improve from doing. So that's a question I would like for you to take away from this recording as you get started with your own project. Okay, then in October, this is when I started getting some real traction. So by the end of October, we had fundraised $2,000. This isn't a crazy amount by any means. In the grand scheme of things and what people are building, $2,000 isn't a lot, but I was really excited about it because going back to here, I actually have this, I think I have a screenshot here. So when I wanted to create Smarts for Heart, as you can see, the name actually changed from Smarts for Hearts to Smarts for Hearts because I realized that someone had claimed Smarts for Hearts domain, so I just removed the last S. Anyways, people still get confused about that. My goal was just to raise $1,000. So by raising $2,000 by the second month, proved to myself, I can actually do something way bigger than I had ever anticipated. And as you can see, it was a pretty rough framework of what I thought, I would actually do. And, as you start building something, I think a quote that has really resonated with me is that you do not get clarity from thinking about things. You get clarity from taking action. So what that means to me, even now with the new projects that I build and as I continue to scale Smarts for Heart, is that by overthinking things, by doubting myself, that's not going to give me clarity on my situation, but by taking action and just moving one foot in front of the other every day, that's how I'm actually going to improve and be able to look back and reflect on how much I've grown along the way. And then I remember after every month, I would actually do these like recaps on Instagram. So you can see this is the end of October. We had raised $1,500 and I was really excited about this. We had a total of 13 families. I'm not sure if I probably was exaggerating a little bit. I can't lie. I do not think that we had like 13 active families. That seems kind of intense. But anyways, I was still growing and we had done 112 hours of tutoring and babysitting. So I was just tracking all these metrics. And in September, we had raised $600. So we had like doubled the impact. We doubled the impact in October and it was just growing, which made me happy. Now, that's why I think that when you're building a project, you want to have some sort of metric to measure its growth. For me, that was the amount of money we raised for the Ronald McDonald's House, New York. And another thing that I would track is also the number of babysitting and tutoring hours that our team had provided. So there are many ways to measure growth beyond just like how much money you're making from it, how much impact it's making, but also just like the operational side of it, like how many families are involved, how many students are involved, etc. And at that time, I think I had a team of 6 students. In that Instagram post, it said that I had a team of 20. I think I had a team of let's say 10 to 20 students, but not all of them were connected with job opportunities at the time. They were just kind of on the team, but not really connected yet. And I remember during this time, I started experimenting by offering referral payments. So I would send out these monthly newsletters. In September, I had this recap. This is my old logo, by the way. This does not look great. I literally just put together random things on Canva. Anyways, this is what I would try to experiment. So I would try to incentivize families to give us reviews. I would try to incentivize them to, spread the word with their families. Now I have a totally different approach on this, 2 years later. But that being said, I'm happy that I gave it my best shot at the time. This is the way I knew how to do it. Okay. And I would say that when you're connecting with people, leverage your position as a young student looking to create an impact. So no matter who you talk to, whether it's someone your age or someone older than you, people will always be impressed by your initiative, especially at such a young age, and will probably want to help you support a cause or get you further in your project. So I think you actually, while being young, sometimes you're underestimated. At times it actually makes you look more impressive. So the way, when I would talk to families, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you're only like 17 and you're doing all this, or you're this ambitious, like, of course we would want to, see this through with you. So instead of seeing it as like a disadvantage, it honestly could be your greatest strength. Now, since I had a bigger team, I started to host bi-weekly calls with them. I would try to get feedback from their experiences to think, how can I keep improving the services? And I would also do like recruitment initiatives. So I would do activities with them to help them help me recruit more students and get to more families. So an example of this, I'll show you some of the posts on Instagram. I would take screenshots of our like Zoom meetings, and I would be like, second official recruitment planning session. I'll just keep scrolling along here. Yeah, so this is what it looked like for the most part. And then you can see here, I actually put a screenshot of one of the planning sessions that we had. So it says bi-weekly recruitment planning session number 2 mind map. So like parent group chats, how can we reach more families and students? Messages, Facebook, Instagram. For school, we can ask faculty to post emails. Yeah, I'm not sure this actually helped a ton in growing it, but to an outside perspective, if someone was looking through our Instagram, they would actually see that we are trying to grow it and that there are like tangible steps. So that's why I recommend when you're building something, you want to have some sort of way of like digitally showing your progress or what you're trying to do. So my way of doing this was just creating Instagram posts. I think it's good to document your journey even if you're not growing from necessarily doing it. It's kind of giving like a digital footprint of everything that you're doing to build this. And it's also really fun to look back on as well. Now, while it might look like, okay, you're on the up and up, you're getting more families, more, you're donating more money, behind the scenes there were some things that were going on. So I remember one time I had this family who needed babysitting support, and I hired my younger brother. I believe he was like 15 or 16 at the time, and I hired him out of desperation. Okay, long story short, the mom was displeased by his behavior. My brother had essentially like just basically been on his phone when the mom came home, and the mom was very displeased and just refused to pay. And so I had a call with her because she was accusing my brother of doing like crazy things like stealing money, which we proved was not true. And I remember on that call, she literally told me like, put your big girl pants on and deal with this, or like suck it up. And I was actually like sobbing after it. And I remember my dad, when he like was witnessing all this, he was like, this is why you don't go into business. Like, why would you put yourself in this position? And so it was one of those moments where I had to reflect on what I was doing, and I felt a lot of guilt from it because it was kind of put on my shoulders that I had, hired my brother. But instead of using this as a way or as a reason for me not to continue my services, it was a learning opportunity. So I was like, instead of hiring out of desperation, I'll actually put a family on a wait list instead of just connecting them with a random person who can fulfill the job, just because I want the quality to be there every time a family connects with us. Now, in November, we got some more publicity. So a blog editor at the Ronald McDonald's House, New York, had contacted me to go on a quick call to learn more about the Smarts for Heart initiative so he could create a blog post. And I'll quickly pull up what this blog post looks like. So, yeah, this is what it looks like. This is one of the first flyers I gave him. I also gave him some reviews from some of the families using our services. Yeah, so this is what it looked like. Nothing crazy, but that's the power of a digital presence. It gave my service lots of credibility because the organization I was supporting was, also promoting the service. And it demonstrated to our families or like our clients the impact we were making without us saying it directly. And it showed credibility to outside perspectives, like other students who might be interested in joining the team and admissions officers as well. And also, one more thing I'd mention for college apps specifically is that there is a section called additional information where you can add links. So I actually linked this blog post on my application to, show credibility behind what I was building. Okay, moving into college applications, because now in November, that's when my first round of applications were due. I didn't do early decision anywhere, so I didn't do like a binding application anywhere, but I did a bunch of early action because I wanted to give myself the best shot of getting into schools. So this is when I started beginning to write about Smarts for Her in my college apps. And so this is exactly what I wrote in my activities list. I think the $5,000 part of it was from, like, I kept I kept increasing the number as my applications went on. So like maybe in October when I submitted my first application, I wrote that we had raised $3,000, and then in January when my last application was due, I submitted like the most recent number to update it. But I described it as launching a nonprofit babysitting/tutoring organization. It recruited, interviewed, and matched 20 plus student tutors/sitters to families, raised over 5K. I believe the activities list gives you like about 100 characters or 150 characters per activity to write about. So there's very limited space, and that's why I recommend things like a blog post or other links that prove your credibility, because it's really hard to give yourself the space to write about it here. Also, one other thing I would mention is that your project can operate as a nonprofit organization, as in like it can still be charitable and make an impact without being a registered nonprofit. Smarts for Heart is not a registered nonprofit organization, which requires a lot of legal support to get it to that status, because there's a lot of like documentation and things that you have to prove every year to keep it as a nonprofit. But you can still create something that's charitable without registering it as a nonprofit and paying a bunch of fees to lawyers to get that approved. Yeah, and then as I mentioned before, I added these links from the blog post and my website to the additional information section of my Common App page. And you cannot update your application after you submit it. Like once you submit it to a school, it's locked in. But you can always update your website. So the link will stay the same to the college admissions officers, but depending later on when they click on it, because they're probably not reading your application right away, you still have a chance to show the growth that you've achieved over time. Now, moving into January. So this is when I had my interview for Harvard, and I remember mentioning Smarts for Heart when my Harvard interviewer, just the first question was, tell me about yourself. And so the interviewer asked a lot of questions about Smarts for Heart because it was something that I brought up right away as part of my, connection to my past, present, and future. And so she was very interested by my initiative, and I think what she liked about Smarts for Heart or all the other things I was doing was that I could speak a lot about it. And the reason why I could speak a lot about it, because it was all me. I was the one running it. I was the one growing it. I was the one day-to-day operations, skipping class to take calls from families. Like I could speak very authentically about my experience because I wasn't having a parent who was like hovering over my shoulder running it. It was all on me. And I think that also translated a lot of my essays as well. Now, for CBS News, during this time, I remember coming back from an exam one day, and I opened up my email, and I was emailed by an administrator at the Ronald McDonald House in New York, and they gave me an invitation for a live interview on CBS News New York to feature my efforts of raising money through Smarts for Heart. And that was so exciting. It's obviously such a great opportunity to pitch your services online and have the credibility of, being invited for a live interview. And keep in mind, this was over a month after I submitted my last application. And my last application was to Harvard. So I couldn't go back and show them oh my God, wait, hey, I did this interview. But I was able to link the interview to my website. I was able to add it to my website, and they still have the link to my website. So you can kind of see how that will show growth over time if they did take the time to look at the website. And then to make it more legit, I did pay a freelancer on Upwork or Fiverr. These are both freelancing agency platforms where you can connect with people who will you can pay them one-off to just create something for you. So I paid someone $125 to create my logo. That felt like a lot of money at the time, and it's honestly not necessary nowadays with AI and you can also ask your artistic friends to create something as well. But yeah, that is something that I did invest in because I wanted to make it look a little bit more legitimate. And yeah, one thing that I would take away from this is that you can create an initiative that supports an existing thriving nonprofit organization. So the one that I was connected with was Ronald McDonald House New York, and that creates a lot of connections that can propel you ahead. So the Ronald McDonald House New York is very highly credited. And I don't have connections to, CBS News New York, but they did. So by supporting them, I was able to connect with this larger broadcast studio and secure an interview. So then in February, I did a live interview on CBS News, which was super exciting, and I had raised $6,000. I'll actually open it up here. So this is what it looked like. Yeah. I recorded this February 21st of 2024. I haven't actually watched the interview through, like, I haven't listened to myself speak because I get a little bit of secondhand embarrassment watching it sometimes. You know, it's tough to see yourself talk, but this is essentially what the video looked like. And once again, I think I was able to speak very candidly because I was very passionate about what I was creating, and I was also able to describe the vision I saw for it in the future. Yeah. And then, yeah, I added the link to my interview as soon as it was posted. I added the link to the interview to my website as soon as it was published. And then later on that month, I actually went through the visits on my Wix website, and I had saw a visit from a viewer in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where Harvard is located. And so I'm pretty sure that the admissions officers had looked at my additional information links, and when they clicked on my Smarts for Heart website, they had seen the CBS News New York interview because I put it on the landing page. And I think once they watched this video, it added credibility to what I was building, and it showed that I didn't just drop it after I, submitted my college applications, but I continued building it way past after I had submitted my application to Harvard. Yeah. And I also think I came across as pretty professional in the video, so you can't fake your speaking skills, unlike in your writing supplements where you can fake a lot of things, right? You can get AI to write something for you. You can have a professional writer write something for you as well if you have the money to do so. But you can't fake how professional you are when you speak and your passion for it as well. Whew. Okay. That was a really long video. I don't think there's any other files that I want to show you here. I think I just showed you everything that I originally intended to. But yeah, this video could go on for quite a long time, but I'm going to start wrapping it up here. This was the full timeline of starting Smarts for Heart up until March, which is when I actually received the merit scholarship offers and my admission to Harvard. Now, over the past 2 years, because now it is April 2026, so it's been over 2 years since I was admitted to Harvard and building this. And I want to kind of just briefly touch on where Smarts for Heart is now. So Smarts for Heart is a registered business with an LLC. It has a team of 30 high school and college students, and 19 of them are actively connected to job opportunities. I've also hired a virtual assistant to help with logistics and operations. So I've hired basically an employee, which is crazy to say. I've hosted tabling events at public schools to promote our services, and I've met weekly with other tutor business owners to learn business strategy. So I've, being a 19-year-old, I'm now 20, but I was 19 when I connected with these other business owners, and it's been really crazy that I've been able to connect with them through our shared background of having our own tutoring businesses. I've also learned how to run a business. So I've had to select my own team, handle issues, kind of learn how to measure cash flow, learn marketing techniques, and honestly, it's been very stressful at times. I've had sleepless nights where I was losing money, but I think when you put that stress on yourself, it's different from the stress you get from an employer. So in your life, you're going to choose what stress you get, and I think being able to put that stress on myself and knowing it's going to help me grow is very rewarding. And by building Smarts for Heart, I've realized that entrepreneurship is my true calling. It gives me energy when I speak to families, when I speak to tutors, when I do training sessions. And if I'd never created this passion project, I would have never considered this as a potential full-time business that I could run after graduating. I'm currently a second-year student at Harvard, so I'm still kind of waiting out the next 2 years, trying to build it so hopefully it's profitable enough where I could run it full-time. But that being said, I encourage you to think of your passion projects as things that can honestly last way beyond high school, and you'll learn so much from it. I went into creating a tutoring service thinking, oh, this shouldn't be too hard. There's so many technical things that you'll learn along the way, and you only learn business not by sitting in the class talking about business, but by doing it yourself. And by business, you can be a nonprofit organization. I would still consider you a type of business because you're, handling money, trying to get clients, etc. So they all kind of fall under the category of a business, whether you're making money from it or not. So it's been a really exciting process, and I hope this video gave you more insight into the path it took to get to where Smarts for Heart was when I applied to colleges. I mean, obviously there's been a lot more that has happened since then, but that was literally like what my nonprofit or like my business looked like up until applying to colleges. Now, in the Ivy Off Script community, it's my most recent passion project. I am creating college resources for high school students. I realize that a lot of the rhetoric online from college consulting services is they kind of they kind of like guilt trip you into like purchasing their services because they want you to believe that you're like, oh, you're falling behind if you don't start by 8th grade, if you don't start as freshman in high school. I didn't start thinking about colleges until my senior year of high school. Would I recommend that? No. But I'm a first-gen college student, so applying to colleges felt very intimidating, and I don't want any other students to feel like they're lost in the process. So in my classroom, I've actually posted some materials to help you find your narrative. You do not have to pay me thousands of dollars to access these right now. As of now, it's currently free for all of the members in the community. And sorry, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. I'm a little sick if you can't tell. I feel very congested, but whew, 1 second. Wow, okay. I'm back. I literally just had the most intense sneezes of my life. Okay. But on this community, I'm going to be posting resources that I have this like 30-day sprint challenge where if you're interested in creating a passion project and you just need someone to kind of take you through what every day should look like and just give you actionable, easy steps to take to prove your idea and just get started on it, this is the community for you. And right now, as I said before, it is completely free, so I really highly encourage you to join it. And you'll also get direct access to me if you participate in the chats. And some other things that we do is that we host weekly calls with Harvard students, also specifically international Harvard students, because I know there is a lack of information about applying internationally and from other services as well. Yeah, so, if you're interested in learning more about how to get started with your own passion project, I highly encourage you to join my community. And other resources that we have all give you action steps so you can get one step closer to where you want to be, because I know this process seems really confusing and complicated. There's a lot of information and documents online, but I feel like it can be overwhelming, and at some point you need less information. You just need more direct action steps to take. So if you have any other questions about my passion project, please leave a comment on this Loom, or you can get in contact with me on my social media channels on Instagram, which is it's Amelia, which is probably how you found this video. But anyways, yeah, I'm going to wrap up the video here, and thank you so much for joining me. I hope to create other similar videos about my experiences in the future. Okay, bye!